Hello, welcome in. The dance of polarity and relating, from unconscious reactions to integrated power, pleasure, and connection. Let's dive right in. I'm going to start this class by doing what I always do with those who I serve, which is inviting you to check in with your body. Notice your breath. Come into this moment. Notice if you're enduring discomfort anywhere. And if you're a woman, you are probably so practiced at enduring discomfort. So you might need to use the restroom. Go use the restroom. Go put on some cozy socks, grab a cashmere wrap, get some hot tea, open the window. Do what you need to do to tend to your nourishment right now. We're going to talk about how this is very related to the feminine here in a little bit. And so take care of your creature comfort so you can really be present for the next many moments. We're going to step into a self-assessment. So I invite you to grab a piece of paper, a pen, something to write with, because we're just jumping right into this experience. So here are a list of common experiences. I've been doing this work for over 25 years, and these are experiences that a lot of the people who I work with, men and women both, often experience in your life. And so I invite you to choose 3 of them. Blaming, being the victim, controlling others, manipulating, worrying, being passive aggressive, anxiety, jealousy, overgiving, overwhelm, emotional floods, being unsure or lost. And so I don't want you to take a ton of time here, but just notice which of these words kind of float up in you as, oh yeah, I hear myself saying this or feeling this often, or maybe writing about it in my journal or talking to my therapist about it. Or I've already diagnosed myself as having anxiety, whatever it might be, just write those down. And now I want you on your piece of paper to draw a pie chart. So just draw this circle. And again, just high level, assess what percentage of the time. So if this pie chart is, say, an average week of time, how much time do you spend experiencing those 3 qualities? So for example, my 3 might be overwhelm, worry, and blame. If I look at a whole week or maybe a whole month, I might spend 15% of my time feeling or experiencing overwhelm, worry, or blame. So just sketch that out. And again, just high level. Okay, no one's going to see this. Now, I want you to look at these 3 common experiences: arrogance, shaming, eviscerating, greed, selfishness, forcing, disconnects through the intellect. That means disconnecting from your body, another person, by going up into your head, into your intellect. Avoidant, power over planning, disconnected from the whole, dominates the feminine. Dictating, criticizing, judgmental, unconscious. So what of these 3 do you most commonly experience in a day? And again, just the first 3 that land in you. And now add these to the chart. So what percentage of time over a week or a month might you experience these qualities? So for me, if I'm looking at judgment, criticizing, and shaming, it might be 35%. So again, just high level, if that whole pie chart is 100% of your time, right, having experiences in your life, what percentage would be those last 3 qualities? And then we're going to put those together on your pie chart, right? And so that pie chart that you started with, you're going to have 6 qualities on there. And high level, just assessing how much of your time do you spend in those quadrants or with those experiences. And when I taught this class last week live, I had a woman ask me, well, what's in the rest of the pie chart? Well, the rest of the pie chart would be other experiences like joy, excitement, anticipation, delight, wonder, curiosity, right? The things that we might call light or easy experiences, right? But we're entering into this conversation around polarity, entering through the shadow. We're entering through the darkness. We're entering through the aspects of self that sometimes we don't want to look at, because sometimes it's a little bit easier to see polarity from that lens. So you have your pie chart, right? All right, so let's keep going. So that first list I shared with you, those are shadow aspects of the feminine, okay? And those are listed here. The second list I showed you, those are shadow aspects of the masculine. And so we have feminine energy and we have masculine energy. All of us, whether you're a woman or a man, all of us have feminine and masculine energy. The shadow aspects are the aspects that are often unconscious. They're the aspects of ourselves that are kind of dark, that haven't been brought up to the light. They're often the aspects of ourselves that get us in trouble. It's how it is that we can create discord with our spouse or within ourselves, which is pretty easy to imagine if we were living from these shadow aspects all the time. So I've been married over 25 years, and early on in our marriage, things were very, very hard. And I could not find the answers for my marital issues in traditional therapy. And so I found them for myself. And the reason why we started with the self-assessment is that everything I just taught you in the last few minutes, I never learned as a couples therapist, which I've been trained as for over 2 decades. I never learned when I saw my own couples therapist, and I saw many. I never learned in any of the books that I read as a couples therapist. But what I came to find out, and I orient around very deeply right now, is that these aspects of polarity are incredibly important for you to understand how to be in a healthy marriage with somebody else, or in a deep, intimate relationship with yourself or any friend or loved one. And we're going to go deeper into what I mean by all of this. So my marriage started 26 years ago with a crash rather than a bang. I just married my best friend and rock climbing partner, Greg. He was commuting on his bicycle to work like he always did. And I received a phone call from the chaplain of a local university medical center. And he said to me, "Are you Mrs. Glick? There's been an accident. Come right away." And even as I say those words, I can feel my heart just beating in my chest. It was a moment that changed our lives. When I got there, I saw my husband laid out on a gurney and 6 doctors standing around him. And I heard these words: "He's lucky to be alive. He was thrown 150 feet and hit the pavement." Over 20 years as a police officer, and I've never seen someone survive a collision like that. The driver didn't even hit his brakes. He was going 40 miles an hour when he ran the red. "I want you to be prepared. We might need to amputate his leg. He will never walk again, ride a bike, or rock climb." So my husband had been a triathlete. He and I were climbers together. He would bike to work 40 miles every single day. And so to get this news that as he was riding his bicycle to work, that somebody ran a red light and T-boned him, it just sent me into a tailspin. And I was 26 years old. On his 3rd day in the hospital, I discovered that I was pregnant. Back then, I was a strong feminist kind of a gal. I knew how to work hard and get things done. So I got busy taking care of things, working hard, and I conditioned all kinds of immature, unhealthy patterns in myself and in my marriage just to get through that crisis. And I'm wondering if you can relate. And so I did the things that needed to be done. I had a husband who was in the hospital. I was sick in the first trimester of my pregnancy. I was working full-time at a nonprofit. We were trying to make ends meet. And so I did what any wife would do, which is nose to the grindstone. Do you know what that's like? Have you had times in your life where you were doing that? If so, you probably were conditioning a lot of shadow feminine and shadow masculine. A couple years later, our son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So here's a picture of us with our kiddo when he was in kindergarten, and we were still biking back then. You'll see my husband holding a helmet. We would bike our tandem with our son on the back. So there were 3 of us in a line on up the street to the local elementary school. And our son had type 1 diabetes, which meant one of us was getting up every night for over a decade, checking his blood sugar. We were under tremendous financial pressure. My husband was still having surgeries at that time so that he could walk. They were able to save his leg. I was back in school. I was starting my own private practice. So we were under tremendous pressure and just trying to do all the things that people do in their late 20s, early 30s as you're growing a family and a life together. So this would have been my emotional pie chart circa 2006. So I was really in a lot of shadow, masculine and feminine. I was blaming. I felt like the victim. I was shaming my husband. I was selfish. I was avoiding things. I was over planning. I was doing all of these things in order to get through But what I didn't know back then was that I was conditioning these muscles to get really strong that were not healthy muscles for my life. And they were going to cause a lot of problems in my marriage, and they did. So we did what people do when you're struggling. We went to couples therapy. I read all kinds of books like The Five Love Languages. And what I learned after investing thousands of dollars in that path is that couples therapists wanted us to talk about our problems, but I was not bringing to the table all of this that I had. This pie chart of shadow was not something that was ever being named. And so we were trying to talk about our problems through the lens of all of this shadow material. And so there was really no way that I was available for a real solution when I was steeped in my own blame of myself, blame of my husband. So, I haven't introduced myself to you. My name's Jenny Glick. I have a couple of graduate degrees. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified sex therapist. I've been doing this work for over 20 years. I've worked for myself for over 20 years. I'm a guide, I'm a mentor, I'm a torchbearer for women and men who are interested in taking this maturation path in their relationships so that they can become a wholer version of who they are. So I created my own concept of how to do marriage well. And I look at it as marriage being an initiation rather than a problem to fix or a person to solve. This is all about a path of your own becoming. Through a deep exploration of spirituality and energetics and a whole lot of shadow work, I started to orient to my marriage as a mirror and not something to fix. So I started seeing my marriage as something that's mirroring back to me. And prior to that, I was looking at my marriage and my husband as something that was broken, that I chose the wrong person, that he was wrong, that our marriage could not be resurrected. And I even had a couple of therapists tell us that we should just get a divorce. So let's go back to some basics. And these are concepts, again, that I never learned in all of the schooling that I did to be a therapist. I just learned it on my own and figured it out. We all have feminine and masculine energy, okay? Every single one of us. And we have light aspects, which are the mature, or what I think of as initiated, grounded, or safe aspects of these qualities. And we have shadow aspects, right? So we have the light aspects, or the beautiful parts of ourselves that are out in the light. And then the shadow aspects, they are immature, they are uninitiated, unhealthy, and often adolescent. So they're not wrong, they're not broken. They just haven't been brought up to the light. So it makes a lot of sense why it is that when you get married early on, or if you're in a new job, or you're a new entrepreneur, you're going to have a lot of immature aspects of yourself because they haven't grown up through the initiation that happens over time and through the opportunity to meet life, right, as we age. So here's how it works. The shadow aspects of the feminine. So we're going to start there. So here are some of them. And this is not an exhaustive list. There are literally hundreds of words that we could put here. So I took two of my favorite back then, blaming and overwhelmed. I've highlighted them for you. So I was literally projecting the blame and the overwhelm onto my adorable husband here. So I was projecting them like he was the screen, and I was blaming him. It's your fault. And why is everything on me? That was my overwhelmed story, my blaming, overwhelmed story. So I was projecting all of that on my husband. And back then, there was no way he could do anything to make it better because I was fully rooted and grounded in these feminine aspects of self. Is this making sense to you? What I didn't realize was that I was projecting these qualities onto him, but he was just a mirror. Because the truth was, I was really hard on myself, and I was creating a whole lot of overwhelm for myself in my mind. And I have worked with women, like I've said, for over 2 decades, going on 3 decades now. And I know how it is really common that we can create overwhelm for ourselves because we're not doing things like setting boundaries, which I'm going to talk about later. That's the healthy masculine is setting boundaries. The unhealthy feminine is being overwhelmed. It's like a whole lot of water spilling over. I have too much because I'm saying yes to so many things. I'm very overwhelmed. I'm often doing it to myself, right? And what I want to do, or that instinct when we're young and immature, is to project it on somebody else, but it was mine to learn how to deal with. Similarly, the shadow masculine. And so we'll just choose two. Two of my favorite back then was shaming my husband. I knew you weren't going to do it. If around the garage, I'd ask him to clean the garage. He wouldn't do it. And I would say, I knew you wouldn't do it. And then he'd feel bad, right? I could be judgmental. So why can't you do anything, right? So I'm projecting all of the shame that I'm trying to deliver to him that I have for myself, right? The judgment that I have for myself, the ways that I'm being hard on myself, I'm projecting them onto him. And in those situations, there's no way that he could have gotten it right. And any script that we would have used, that our couples therapist, well-meaning, gave us, we were never going to find that connection because I was showing up with that pie chart, that 90% of all that shadow material. Again, that's really a mirror. Anything I'm projecting on somebody else, it's a mirror of myself. So your marriage or intimate relationship shows back to you, and the shadow parts of self that are uninitiated, they're unhealthy, they're immature, and they might even be toxic if we live there and spiral around in that space for many, many years. So when those shadow aspects first come up when we're young and we don't know, right? They're adolescent, they're immature, it's fine. But when we keep conditioning them, when we keep falling into utilizing them as a strategy in our marriage, they become toxic, they become unhealthy, and it can literally make us sick. So where you feel stuck in your partnership is the exact curriculum to you becoming whole. And this is what marriage therapy never showed me. It never showed me that the shame, the judgment, the overwhelm that I was living in, that was showing back to me, and that was my curriculum for my growth. But I was so distracted by focusing on my husband and focusing on our marriage that I never saw it. So here, take a breath. Okay, we can do this. I know there are a lot of words here. So in order for the shadow feminine, that unhealthy, uninitiated, adolescent, possibly toxic aspects, and we're going to use my examples, blaming. In order for blame to become the healthy aspect, the light aspect of the feminine, which we'll say is acceptance, right? Just as an example, what that feminine, that unhealthy feminine needs is the light aspect of the masculine. So when I was in a state of blaming my husband, what I needed actually was generosity. I needed to learn generosity for myself, how to be generous to myself instead of blaming myself all of the time. Any of you women who are listening to this do that? So instead of blaming myself, I needed to meet myself with the healthy masculine. I needed to meet myself with generosity. I wasn't able to do that. So I wanted him to do it. And he wasn't doing it because he was walking his own path, right? And so what's important for you to see here is that any of those shadow aspects of the feminine, and this isn't an exact science, this is an art, okay? This is an art. And so if you tend to be someone who blames, look at this list, and I'm going to give you a PDF at the end of this training. Look at this list of light aspects of the masculine and choose what you feel like your inner knowing tells you you need to meet that blame, right? So rather than blaming someone, maybe you need humility, right? Maybe you need learning how to honor the feminine, right? Maybe what you need is a boundary or learning self-responsibility. I don't know what it is for you. For me, what the medicine I needed was generosity. Okay, the medicine that I needed is generosity. And so I work with people privately doing this work. You'll have information later if you feel like you want someone to walk you through this. But this gives you an idea of how it is that you can really break down that if you're stuck in overwhelm, you probably need boundaries. You probably need discernment, right? And what a boundary is learning how to say your yes is a yes and your no is a no, and then following through with it, even if that means somebody's going to be let down. And when you do that, when the shadow feminine meets the light aspect of the masculine, the healthy masculine, what happens is you get the light aspect of the feminine. What I hope you're hearing is that what's underground and unconscious here gets to come up into the light, and then you get to experience acceptance. You get to experience easefulness, right? If you've ever found yourself stuck in a place of blaming or being a victim, and if you've had a well-meaning person come up to you and say, you just need to accept that, and you feel that struggle, like, I don't know how to accept it. I don't know how to go from blaming him to accepting him. That's what I was trying to do all those years ago. I didn't know how to do that because I didn't have this pillar of the light aspect of the masculine to lean into. Oh yeah, I need to learn how to be generous to get to acceptance. Similarly, now we're shifting to the masculine. So the shadow aspect of the masculine, the unhealthy, uninitiated aspect of the masculine, arrogance, shaming, over planning, criticizing, being judgmental, defendedness, right? All of that. The medicine that the shadow masculine needs is the light aspect or the healthy aspect of the feminine. So the shadow masculine, back then when I was shaming and judging my husband, I needed the medicine of empathy and trusting life. That was work I needed to do in me. I was so busy shaming myself that I didn't do it right. I didn't choose the right person. I wasn't being a good wife and mother. I should know how to do this. I'm a therapist, for goodness sakes. Right? That was my inner curriculum so that I could move to the light aspect of the masculine, being attentive, discerning, judicious, right? That's the healthy aspect of the masculine. And so what we do when we are on this path and coming to know polarity is we're really looking at what it is that I need internally in order to be an expression of the light aspects of masculinity or femininity in my life. So we're just going to break it down here. 3 steps to getting unstuck in your relationship with yourself, with your partner, in your business. I work a lot with people in their professional lives, entrepreneurs. So first, just identify where you're stuck. So for me, back then, I was judgmental, criticizing, shaming, overwhelmed, full of worry and blame. And again, this is an art, not a science. So you just identify some of those. These are all shadow aspects. Oops, I went a little too fast. And then step 2, choose your medicine, right? Choose your medicine. And so for me in this example, I don't want to spend 50% of my time in judgment, criticizing, shaming, overwhelm, etc. So I chose aspects of the feminine and masculine that can be medicine for my system: generosity, discernment, boundaries, empathy, trusting life. So how is it that I start to lean into those qualities, practicing those muscles? Because if I continue to practice judgment, criticism, and shaming, I'm just going to get really good at that. So how do I practice generosity in myself, with my own schedule, with how it is that I talk to myself? I have a whole curriculum called Your Marriage is Your Ashram that goes deep into this. I'll give you a discount code if you want to participate in that on your own. Because so much of this we're doing reflexively to ourselves, criticizing ourselves, creating overwhelm, internal blame, those kinds of things. So you want to find your medicine on these light aspects of feminine and masculine energy here. And then you choose this self-initiatory path of defining your own curriculum, right? You take these words, generosity, discernment, these practices into your conversations with your spouse, a business partner, mother, or friend. You really lean into understanding and shining the light on where it is that you can tend to judge people. If you're judging yourself, you're judging somebody else, right? And so as we bring our witness to how it is that I can create more stuckness by being in the sludge of the shadow and then choosing to really mature those aspects of ourselves so that we can be in intimate dialogue with someone else. Now we're working our inner curriculum, and that person is available for therapy. Though what I find is they often don't need it. So thank you very much for being here. I'm Jenny Glick. I do have a course called Your Marriage is Your Ashram. I would love to gift you 80% off that course. Usually it's $222. But if you go to jennyglick.com/YMYA for Your Marriage is Your Ashram, use the coupon code UNSTUCK80 for 80% off. It's a course that hundreds of women have taken. I have had amazing feedback on it. I am basing my forthcoming book off of that curriculum. It has changed many people's lives. It certainly changed my life and saved my marriage. And I'm now going on year 26 and happier than I've ever been. I hope that this course has been instructive to you. If you've made it to the very end, I would love for you to drop me an email at jenny@jennyglick.com and let me know what your biggest takeaway was. What's something that you felt like really spoke to you? Or if you even have a little short question, drop me a question and I will reply to you, send you a personal response. Thank you for being in my world. And I look forward to seeing you on the inside of